Actually project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
That's right, boys, we did it. After suffering for 4 years with a cognitively declined, hair-sniffing president, Donald Trump became the 47th president, defeating Kamala Harris, who failed to become the first Indian female president, black female president.
I didn't know she was black.
Donald Trump was able to overcome the corrupt media, corrupt prosecutors, corrupt pollsters, and he did it by winning the popular vote, which is something he was not able to do even in 2016. Now, for many people within MAGA, Trump winning the 2024 election was sort of like the end of the story in a sense. It was like a trilogy. You know, you have 2016 was A New Hope, 2020 was The Empire Strikes Back, and then 2024 was Return of the Jedi. So for I think a lot of people on the right, for a lot of people in MAGA, the 2024 election was sort of the end of the Trump story. But the reality is politics is about governing, not just winning elections. So the question is, how has Trump governed since he's, completed the comeback? Has he been successful? Has his second term so far been better than his first term? Where has he succeeded? Where has he fell short? Let's discuss in this video the pros and cons of Trump's first year back in office and where things might be headed towards. First, let's talk about the cabinet Trump created. He picked RFK Jr. to head HHS. He picked Pam Bondi to be the Attorney General. He picked, who did he pick for Secretary of State?
Just tell ABC News President-elect Trump is expected to name Republican Senator Marco Rubio as his pick for Secretary of State.
No. Wait.
Oh yeah, that's right. He picked Marco Rubio. Terrific. I'm not the biggest fan of Marco Rubio, but he picked Marco Rubio to be Secretary of State. He picked a very strong cabinet, a stronger cabinet than I would say he first picked for his first administration. And then he helped with he created with Elon Musk DOGE. Vivek Ramaswamy was supposed to originally be part of DOGE as well, but he left, hopefully to find a pair of shoes or something. So it was Elon Musk and Trump created this new semi-government organization, DOGE. And what DOGE did was looked for fraud and abuse that was within the government. And, it was somewhat successful. They did find some fraud, especially with USAID. And they laid off thousands of government employees that weren't needed. That was just government bloat. And, DOGE probably saved, millions of dollars. Now, Elon Musk had promised that he was going to be able to save trillions of dollars. That did not come to fruition. But, DOGE faced a lot of headwinds. You had all these terrible, terrible judges that kept ruling what DOGE was doing was illegal. They kept having to appeal it. There were people within the administration that was trying to undermine DOGE, people like Marco Rubio, again, that idiot. You had Marco Rubio and Elon Musk butting heads. You had other people within the cabinet butting heads with Elon and DOGE. And also, you had one of DOGE's members, Big Balls, funny name, Big Balls was attacked. He was attacked in D.C. The people in DOGE were targeted by these left-wing lunatics. And in the end, Trump at the State of the Union talked about some of the money DOGE may have saved the government, including transgendered mice research.
$8 million for making mice transgender.
It's not clear that's actually what was happening, but that's what one of the claims Trump made. But in the end, around May, Elon's government contract, it was a temporary position. It expired back in May. And Elon left DOGE. And one of the things Elon wanted Trump to do with the big, beautiful bill that was passed this past year was to codify some of the cuts DOGE had recommended. They wanted them to be codified into law. Because for many of the cuts, DOGE could only really impact the executive branch and the waste and fraud that takes place within the executive branch. But the problem is some of that money that they were used was, only Congress can deal with the finances because Congress has the power of the purse. So DOGE was not able to do many of the cuts that they wanted to do, and Elon wanted the cuts to be codified into law in the big, beautiful bill. Many of those cuts did not happen, and because of that, Elon got butthurt. And later, he accused Trump of essentially being a pedophile, a very common accusation the Trump administration, as we'll get into. And he accused Trump of being in the Epstein files. That's another name you'll hear later in the video, Epstein. And, that's how Elon's tenure of Doge ended. So it was not that much of a success, if we're being honest. Elon did not deliver on saving the money he said he could with Doge. But he did help expose USAID and the fraud that was. USAID was basically used to help overthrow governments, to do soft power. Maybe you think that's good, maybe you think that's bad. But if you're America first, you don't want to be involved with these other countries. So USAID shouldn't be needed to help bribe many of these other countries. So that's how Doge it sort of ended with the whimpered Doge. And like I said, Elon accused Trump of being a pedophile, which, Trump wasn't too happy about, obviously. But lately, it seems like Trump and Elon are on much better terms. So that's good. But Doge itself, you can't quite call it a failure because it did help expose USAID. But it wasn't quite the success it could have been, and many of the cuts they recommended or said they would do were not codified into law. Speaking of the big, beautiful bill, there was some good stuff in that. They extended the Trump tax cuts, which was good. That was something the Democrats would not have done. They would have let Trump's tax cuts expire, which would have led to one of the biggest tax increases on middle-income people in American history. So it was very good that the Trump tax cuts got extended. And they added some good incentives and benefits for working class people as well, including policies to make it easier to not to pay any or very little tax on tips, no tax on Social Security at a certain income level and threshold, etc. There were some good incentives. It was not the full-on no tax on tips policy that Trump promised. Unfortunately, that was a common theme so far in this first year. Is many of the promises Trump made toward middle-income people, working class people, they were not fully realized this past year, but many of the things the donors wanted have been fully realized, so that's a little bit problematic. But there were some good things in the big, beautiful bill. Increased border security, a lot of good things, lots of good things. But let's shift gears to Liberation Day. So even though you saw during the first several months of the Trump administration, inflation was actually starting to cool. People were starting to have faith in the economy again. Consumer sentiment was an all-time high. So what could go wrong?
Liberation Day.
Yeah, that's right. Liberation Day. That's Trump decided that I know what I'll do. Inflation's cooling down. People finally have confidence in the economy. The stock market's doing well. I know what I'll do. Let's put reciprocal tariffs on every country in the world, including places where there's only penguins living. Let's put tariffs on the island of penguins, folks. I'm gonna be the king of the penguins, folks. Tremendous. So yes, Liberation Day. Trump did reciprocal tariffs on like every nation in the whole wide world. Later, he backtracked many of them because the stock market did not react well to those. So Trump got a little scared by that. So for the next several months, it was Trump renegotiating trade deals with countries, putting tariffs on, putting tariffs off, using tariffs as a way to sanction countries that were doing things Trump didn't like. It was sort of undisciplined. It's not what you really want from a tariff policy, I'll be honest. Whether you support tariffs or not, this was not a disciplined tariff policy on Trump's part. Okay, there's one thing, if you want to put tariffs on automobiles or steel to incentivize people buying and making things in the United States, that's one thing. But if you're going to use tariffs to punish other countries, let's say that are buying like Russian oil, because you're mad at Russia because of the war in Ukraine, no one wants to pay higher prices because you want to punish like a country like India because they buy Russian oil. So whether you like tariffs or not, whether you support, a vigorous industrial policy, the tariffs were not particularly disciplined, okay? It's like Trump's tariff policy is sort of like Bill Cosby next to a sleeping woman. There's just not a lot of self-control there, okay? When Trump maybe I'll cut that out, probably won't. The point is, Trump lacked a little bit of discipline with his tariff policy. And now even though we have still not seen a dramatic increase of prices like at all. In fact, core inflation has maybe even gone down a little bit over the last 2 months of 2025. So the tariffs did not lead to a massive increase of inflation, but they have also not led to an influx of manufacturing jobs coming back to the States yet. Now that could happen. Generally speaking, it takes many years for a country to start rebuilding their manufacturing base help revitalize industrial policy. So that could happen, but Trump probably has to be more disciplined, and he can't be using tariffs as a de facto sanction, like I said, for countries that buy oil from Russia or do business with Iran. You know, we want tariff policy to incentivize people to buy and build in America, not to like help Israel or help Ukraine. I think that's a pretty fair reading of what the public supports. So, tariff policy, a little bit of a bust. I think well-intentioned for the most part, but a little bit more discipline would be good headed for the next 3 years. Now let's switch to the Department of Justice. So one of the first things Trump did when he got back into office, I think literally on Inauguration Day, is he pardoned all of the January 6th prisoners, which was sort of a radical thing to do. I didn't think he would do that. He had promised, or he had said that he was going to at the very least look into pardoning many of the J6ers. But part of me thought that, well, once he's actually elected, he's not going to do that. People like Susie Wiles, who was his campaign manager and became his chief of staff, she's not going to allow Trump to pardon all these people. Just politically, I thought that would have looked kind of bad, a little bit too radical. But no, literally on day one, he couldn't help himself. He's, like I said, a little bit of a lack of discipline, you could say. He couldn't help himself. He pardoned all the January 6th people, including people who beat up cops. It was fucking epic, if you want to know the truth. I mean, think of it like this. January 6, 2021, people thought that was the day Trump's political future was over. They thought, oh, Trump's never coming back. He's going to be sent to jail because of this. Fast forward 4 years later, he's being inaugurated in the Capitol itself because it was so cold outside. They did it within the Capitol, where his supporters had just, rioted in 4 years prior. He gets inaugurated in the Capitol, and then 5 hours later, he's pardoning all those people that did the rioting. It's pretty epic. Whether you support, I don't support January 6th. I wasn't there. I promise. I was not there on January 6th. You could ask anyone, not any of my ex-girlfriends. Don't ask them, particularly Natalie. But I promise you, I was not. I did not go into the building. I wanted to. It was a nice building, but I didn't go into it. But he pardoned all of those people. It's just like, wow. It just tells you what a difference 4 years can be. So he pardoned all those people. It's like, okay, maybe that's a good sign. But then things started to shift very quickly in terms of justice and the Department of Justice. Because now let's get to Epstein, okay? One of the things that people within MAGA have been sort of obsessed with over the last 10 or so years has been Epstein and the so-called Epstein files. Now, almost everyone who's listening to this or watching this video understands what I'm talking about. Jeffrey Epstein, he had this ridiculous island. He had all this ridiculous amount of money, even though it's not clear how he got all this money. He became a professor at like Harvard or Yale, even though he didn't even have a bachelor's degree. Nothing about the whole Epstein story makes a ton of sense. So, he was convicted of having sex with a minor back in 2004 or 2005, I believe, in Florida. A 17-year-old, but a minor nonetheless. And he was then later arrested again or indicted again by the Trump Justice Department, Trump 1.0, back in 2019. He was then found dead in his cell. Bill Barr, the Attorney General at the time, claimed that Epstein committed suicide in a prison, in a jail cell, where you're explicitly not supposed to be able to kill yourself. Okay? That's what the government expected us to believe. They put this guy in a cell where it's supposed to be literally impossible to kill yourself, and Epstein killed himself. In all fairness, Epstein was capable of doing a lot of things that didn't make a lot of sense, so maybe this isn't so weird in retrospect, but no one bought the story that Epstein killed himself. Which is, it burned more fuel to the fire that the government is hiding something. What is this? What is going on with Jeffrey Epstein? What is the story here? So, Trump's running for president, and Trump himself never explicitly really ran on releasing the Epstein files. But he did, or at least his surrogates certainly implied that he would. Especially, people, MAGA adjacent, a lot of commentators, including Dan Bongino, for instance, which didn't age very well. Kash Patel, again, didn't age very well. Kash Patel was appointed to be the FBI director, and Dan Bongino, deputy FBI director. So when these people get into office, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, people expected accountability. It's like, okay, well, you're going to release the Epstein files now. And Pam Bondi goes out, who was the Attorney General and is the Attorney General. And Pam Bondi releases a statement. She goes on Fox News, which is like her second home, Fox News. It's ridiculous. Well, let's not get into Pam Bondi quite yet. But Pam Bondi says, she goes on Fox News and says, oh, the Epstein files are on my desk and I'm reviewing them right now.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
People are like, okay, that's great. The Attorney General, she's on top of it. She's going to release the Epstein files. It's on her desks, folks. Everything's under control. Then a few days later, the Trump DOJ says, oh, the Epstein files don't exist. We don't have them. They're gone. We lost them. They don't exist. Either that or we lost them. We don't have them. There's nothing to see here, folks. Nothing suspicious at all. It's like, well, what happened to them? I thought the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, said that they were on her desk. Well, where did they go? What, did she lose them in her purse or something? Did she leave them at Fox News headquarters? Because that's where she spends all her fucking time, is on Fox News. So where did they go? What's going on here, Pam? Did you lose them in your Barbie playhouse or something? Where are the Epstein files? They were on your desk. What desk? So that just made people even more suspicious. Later, you had again Dan Bongino, Kash Patel doing an interview again on Fox News, claiming that, oh, well, we did review the files. They actually do exist, but there's no client list and there's nothing to see here. He did kill himself. It's like, well, then, what is going on? It caused so much distrust in the administration, and Trump didn't handle it very well. He started calling it a hoax, which, in all fairness, the accusations of him having sex with minors, that clearly is a hoax. Okay, he's not Matt Gaetz, which, by the way, he originally picked to be the Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, but unfortunately, he had too much in common with Jeff Epstein. They both seem to have they're big fans of 17-year-old girls. Let's put it that way. So Matt Gaetz did not become Attorney General. Pam Bondi did. But like I said, this whole Epstein debacle created so much distrust with the administration. That's when you started to see Trump's approval rating starting to tick down dramatically. Because people were like, okay, well, we're not getting real accountability. The rich and the powerful are not being held accountable. And then what's the point of electing Donald Trump? He's this crass guy. He's a little bit of, whether you like Trump or not, he's pretty crude. He's bashful. But that's supposed to be part of the package, because the fact that he's brash, the fact that he can be so aggressive, that's what we want in government. That's why we want him in government, to take on the corrupt system, because you need an asshole. At least in theory, you want an asshole to help take on the corrupt system. But when his administration starts covering up one of what people believe is one of the biggest sex trafficking, child trafficking scandals of all time, that's when a lot of people started to check out from the Trump administration, whether that's fair or not. So the Epstein situation became a debacle. Then the Trump Department of Justice indicted James Comey and Letitia James. And for those who don't know, James Comey was the FBI director under Obama and for the first several months of Trump 1.0. Bad guy. James Comey was one of the most corrupt FBI directors of all time. He was essentially trying to set up Trump as a Russian agent. He helped push the Russia collusion conspiracy theory, which went nowhere. But that's who James Comey was. He allowed the FBI and other intelligence agencies within the government to spy on the Trump campaign because they didn't think Trump would win. And when Trump won, they realized they were screwed, and the only way for them to try to hide the fact that they were spying on their political opponent was to set up Trump as a Russian agent. And that's why Trump ended up firing Comey, and that led to Mueller, that whole debacle. So indicting Comey was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, they didn't handle it properly, and the indictment got dismissed by the judge. Now, maybe the judge shouldn't have dismissed the indictment. It was probably politically motivated because the judge was a Democrat-appointed judge. It's so funny. When Trump was the one being indicted, every judge he got was like a Democrat judge. But when Democrats get indicted, they still get Democrat judges. But, tell me how that goes. So Comey's indictment got dismissed. Letitia James' indictment got dismissed. John Bolton's indictment hasn't been dismissed because he's a Republican. At least he's a Republican in theory, which, again, goes to show you how our legal system really works if you're a Republican versus, even if you're an anti-Trump Republican, you still don't get it easy. If you're a Democrat, there's no problem. You know, they'll like give you like, they'll dismiss your indictment and then give you tickets to Disneyland if you're a Democrat. It's so pathetic. But so on some of the high-profile prosecutions, Pam Bondi again has not. She's let us down. She's let the Trump administration down. So when it comes to the Department of Justice, it has not been a huge success. With the Epstein debacle, with the James Comey and Letitia James indictments being dismissed, we do not have the accountability that we wanted by electing Trump. So, you know, I would say when it comes to, you know, accountability, like I said, not been a success. It has not been a success. Other parts of the domestic agenda that we've seen in the first year of the Trump administration 2.0, you look at HHS with RFK Jr., the Department of Health and Human Services announced a dramatic overhaul of the childhood vaccine schedule, weakening recommendations for flu and 3 other shots in the name of aligning U.S. policies with certain European countries, essentially meaning that you don't necessarily should be required to take all these ridiculous amounts of vaccines. Not that you necessarily shouldn't, but you shouldn't be forced to, and it should be something that you have to consult with your family doctor, not something the government should have to put immense pressure on you to take. Also, RFK Jr. announced, along with President Trump at a press conference,
I just say it again, don't take Tylenol.
President Trump at a press conference a few months back, that there may be a link between taking Tylenol if you're a pregnant woman and then your baby having autism. So the recommendation is, if you're pregnant and you're a female, which those two tend to be highly correlated, although these days you never know for sure, but if you're a pregnant female, don't take Tylenol. Don't do it. If you want your kid to not turn out like Joe Biden, don't take Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. So that's been a big change in domestic policy. But probably the biggest and most successful area of domestic policy, and you could even argue this goes beyond domestic policy, has been the border. The Trump administration has totally locked down the southern border. We have reports and statistics that show we've had basically 0 illegal immigrants crossing the southern border over the past year, which is just a huge success of the Trump administration. Literally, no people are coming into the country illegally from the southern border. You know, the illegal immigrants coming across the border are having as much success as I have when I hit on older MILFs at the local bar. Like, there's just no success. You can't get in. There's no success. That's how great the border's been. It's literally like perfect. It's been incredible, which is one of the biggest reasons Trump got reelected, was to secure the border. Now, where there's a little bit more controversy, especially in this I can't really get into because it has more to do with this year, not last year, but there's been a lot of controversy involving ICE, which was always going to happen. The Trump administration has been trying to deport people. We have not seen the mass deportations Trump had promised during the campaign trail, but we have seen an escalation of force, or certainly to make it publicly known that we're deporting people, almost like we're putting on a show, maybe to help disincentivize people from crossing the border, or at least trying to attempt to. So I could understand that. But we haven't had mass deportations, but we are deporting people, which has led to recent controversy that I will not get into, because that's not this past year, it's this year. But let's just say in my second video, when I review the second year of Trump 2.0, ICE will probably be featured a lot more given recent events, but the border has been a huge success. Like I said, there's like basically no one coming across the border, according to some reports. That's how the border has just been a huge success. And you want to remember, folks, during the 4 years of our retarded president, Joe Biden, the border was wide open. We had millions and millions of people coming across the border. We have no idea who the hell they were or are. It was awful. It's one of the reasons why housing prices increased, because you had more people. It's one of the reasons why inflation was even happening. When you have all these people coming into the country, whether they're documented or not, but especially if they're undocumented, it leads to a lot of unintended consequences. And the Biden administration did nothing about it. Trump has fixed it. It's been one of the best parts of Trump 2.0, and he deserves a lot of credit for it. This is an unambiguous W on Trump's part. Now let's get to probably the most controversial, or maybe the worst part of Trump 2.0, and that's been foreign policy. Now, things at first started off actually pretty good. He had Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, in the White House, and Trump berated Zelensky. You don't have the cards. You don't have the cards. He berated this little midget, making it clear to him that he had to be more grateful for the United States defending him, which is something we do not need to do. Ukraine is not a vital interest or security interest for the United States. Much more important for Russia's security than the United States security, if we're being honest. So he berated Zelensky in the White House. He threw the midget out. It was great. But ever since then, he's not been able to actually end the Russia-Ukraine war. And he keeps going back and forth by criticizing Putin, then praising Putin, criticizing Zelensky, then praising Zelensky. You know, the crackhead Zelensky. It's just been very sporadic and not been consistent. The reality is, what Trump should have done and what he can still do, what he should have done during the first year was just cut up all the aid from Ukraine and totally cut them off completely and say, we're not giving you another dime. You either agree to our terms for ending the war, but you're going to have to give up a lot of territory to Russia because you've lost the war. And I'm sorry, the losers are the people that have to give up territory. That's just how war works. Russia's winning the war. They were always going to win the war. That's what Trump should have done, but he hasn't done that yet. He's been trying to work with our European quote-unquote allies, to the extent you could call these European nations allies. He's been working with our allies to try to get them to come along with us, but they don't want... Europe wants the war to continue because they want the United States invested in Europe. Because they're afraid if, this war ends, the Trump administration is going to pivot to China or continue their focus in the Middle East and totally leave Europe. And the Europeans don't want that because we subsidize Europe's... we protect Europe. We subsidize their foreign policy, essentially. We are their foreign policy. That's what NATO is to the Europeans. So the Russia-Ukraine thing's been a little bit of a debacle in the sense that Trump did promise he would end the war in his first day back in office, or even before he got back into office as president-elect. And
if I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
That just hasn't happened. Now let's look at the Middle East, which is even more of a disappointment. He was able to get a ceasefire that it's now holding between Hamas and Israel. He got the Israeli hostages back, which is a very good thing. And it looks like there's some progress in trying to continue to establish and continue to implement phase 2, perhaps, of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. We'll see how that goes. But the real catastrophe has been Iran. Because back in the summer... Bibi Netanyahu started lobbying Trump like crazy to bomb Iran, because the reality is Israel wants regime change in Iran. Israel wants to be able to maneuver in the Middle East however the hell they want. They don't want to have to worry about other countries messing with them, which you could understand from their perspective. I'm not begrudging them. My problem is the fact that they can't take out the Ayatollah. They can't do regime change in Iran by themselves, so they keep coming to us to do it for them. And Trump was somewhat resistant, but he still bombed Iran, with the nuclear facilities being the pretext. Now, luckily, Trump didn't go all in on regime change. He got a ceasefire between Iran and Israel several days later with this famous line, which I'll play here, I guess.
That have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
So, we did not end up doing regime change, but again, this is now in the present, so I won't go into it too much, but it looks like we may strike Iran again. Bibi's continually to lobby Trump to bomb Iran, because Israel's never going to take no for an answer, because they want regime change, because Iran's their top opponent in the region. And look, Iran is not a good country. They do fund terrorists. They fund Hezbollah. They probably fund Hamas. But Israel's a little bit out of control too, folks. I mean, Israel, a lot of people within Israel want a greater Israel. They have been trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Let's be honest, folks. That's why it was so important Trump got a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, because Israel was probably committing a genocide, if we're being fair. And I'm not saying genocide was Israel's goal, but it was certainly the means to their goal, when their goal being ethnic cleansing, because they don't want those Arabs there. They don't want the Palestinians there, because they want a greater Israel. And the Palestinians are outbreeding the Israelis, which is a big problem if you want a greater Israel. So the way to get around that is you have to ethnically cleanse Gaza, so you can have a Jewish majority state, so you can expand Israel's borders. That's what was happening there in Gaza. Luckily, Trump put a stop to it for now, but we'll see. This, Israel's like the champion of, breaking ceasefires. It's like crazy. But the real concern here is Iran. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu, shortly before Trump bombed one of Iran's nuclear facilities. Bibi Netanyahu is going around saying that Iran was behind the 2 assassination attempts against Trump during the 24 campaign.
Talk about President Trump. You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look,
It's like, what are we doing here? And you have all these Israel sycophants in Congress, people like Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, who are so pathetic. And you famously had Tucker Carlson interview Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz couldn't really defend himself. He couldn't defend why the United States has this weird relationship with Israel where we almost do whatever the hell they want, whether or not it's in our national interest to do so. It's a very unhealthy relationship. Trump has been totally cucked by Bibi Netanyahu, totally cucked by the Israelis. Again, it's a great thing he got the ceasefire, but playing games with Iran and threatening to do regime change, which would look like we may do now, that could be a disaster for the Trump administration. So that's something he should avoid. Other thing Trump did in a major way in terms of foreign policy was taking out Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. Now, at first, I wasn't so sure about that because Trump gave a press conference right after he kidnapped their president, saying that the United States was going to run Venezuela, which to me sounded like regime change. And that's why I was very much against it. Now, so far, it seems like we're not actually going to be running Venezuela because the regime is still in place. We have not done regime change in Venezuela. The vice president is now the president. We just kidnapped their actual president, Nicolas Maduro. Now, you can support that or not support that, but that is not actually regime change because, again, the regime is still in place. Trump is not a neocon as of yet. That's not a neocon thing to do, in all fairness to Trump. Trump has so far been unwilling to actually do a long, sustained conflict with troops on the ground on foreign countries. What Trump has seemingly preferred to do is do very precise strikes that take, less than like 24 hours. And it's been effective so far. So while I was very much unsure about what I thought about the whole Venezuela situation, if all we did was kidnap a Maduro and he's going to be brought to justice because he probably was the illegitimate president of Venezuela, I'm okay with that. I don't love it. That is an act of war, so he should have gotten congressional approval. But if we're not actually running Venezuela, I'm okay with that for the most part, although I'm still a little bit concerned about what Trump meant when he said that we were going to be running Venezuela. Now look, listening to this video or watching this video, it may sound like I'm a little bit down on the Trump administration so far, Trump administration 2.0. And there's some truth to that, but the reality is you have to remember what we were left with 4 years prior. We had Joe Biden and the Democrats, and they were an effing disaster. There's no way a continuation of that through Kamala Harris would have been better than what we've gotten right now. So far, Trump 2.0 is a lot like Trump 1.0. There are some distinctions. I would say Trump's been better on the border than he was in 1.0 this time around, but I would say he's a bit worse in foreign policy than he was in Trump 1.0. But overall, it's about more of the same, and that's okay. That's okay. The first Trump administration was a success. He deserved a second term. I'm very happy he got his second term. And even with all the things that have happened that I don't agree with, like some of the foreign policy disagreements I have with the administration, and some of the lacking of the domestic promises he said he would implement, like no tax on tips, etc. Overall, it's been a much improvement from the Biden administration. And never give up on Trump. Never doubt him. He usually has a way of coming through in the end. He's one of the greatest Americans to ever live. He's a patriot. He's a good man, believe it or not. And just don't lose faith in the guy. He's been at this for over 10 years now, and you can't never count Trump out, folks. Never count Trump out. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. If you got to this point, like and comment and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. I have a daily podcast as well that goes Monday through Friday. So subscribe if you want to listen to the podcast. And I hope you really enjoyed the video, folks. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.